1. When I was 19, my uncle asked me to stay with him for the summer. He had just bought a home in rural Pennsylvania, farmland out in Amish country. The home and property were pretty run down, so he was paying me to stay with him for the summer and work on fixing things up. It was a large old home and had 2 staircases. One small one in the back part of the house that led directly to his bedroom, and then the main staircase by the front door that led to the other bedrooms. Being a teenager, I used to stay downstairs watching TV after he had gone to bed. After a few weeks, I started to get a weird feeling being alone at night. I would just start to feel like there was someone else downstairs. Sometimes I would think I heard someone whispering. I would get slightly paranoid and find myself glancing in the direction of the adjacent sitting room that had nothing but a couple of chairs. I chalked it up to the fact that it was an unfamiliar house and that it gets incredibly dark out there in the middle of nowhere. As time went on, my uncomfortable and scared feelings started escalating. It's hard to explain, but I had that uncanny feeling of being watched when I was alone at night. There were times when I would get up and go into the other rooms downstairs and turn on the lights just to look and make myself feel better. I eventually just stopped staying downstairs and would just go up to my room and read. Not long after, the sense of someone else being present began following me into my room, which hadn't been the case before. It was like one moment everything was normal and I was happy reading or lying in bed, and then I would get this weighty feeling of something entering the room and watching me. I just tried to ignore it and would eventually fall asleep. Things continued to escalate. The presence started following me into my room virtually every night. I would immediately notice there would be that weighty change in the feeling of the room, and the temperature also seemed to get colder. I would lie in bed at night and hear whispering or breathing in the room. I started sleeping with the lights on. It's been 12 years since this next part, but I remember it like it was yesterday. One night I was lying in my bed with the lights on, reading. I was pretty tired from the work we did that day and was falling asleep earlier than usual. Everything was normal in the room at this point, and I felt relieved because I just wanted to get a good night's sleep. I set my book down and drifted to sleep. Sometime later, I started to be awakened by a strange sound. Lying there with my eyes closed, I could hear something that sounded like rubbing. It wasn't loud, but just this constant, faint rubbing sound coming from nearby. I regained consciousness enough to think, "What is that?" and came to, opening my eyes. I looked down towards my chest. I had been sleeping on my back, and found my left arm extended straight up into the air, reaching towards the ceiling. The rubbing sound was my own fingers. They were being played with? My fingers were being bent and manipulated, and the sound was the skin of my fingers rubbing against each other. Directly above my head was what I can only describe as a black mist or fog, maybe 2.5 or 3 feet wide. Having just woken up, what was happening did not immediately register. I laid there staring at my hand in the mist for a few seconds, confused. I think this was compounded by the fact that I couldn't feel my hand, so it almost seemed like it wasn't happening to me. Then, like a bolt of lightning, a jolt of pure terror shot through my entire body. I had never felt terror before. I'd been afraid in my life, but I didn't know what terror was until this moment. I think horror movies actually do a pretty good job of recreating how it feels, with the disorienting camera angles and music like the famous score from Psycho. I yanked my arm back and sprang back like a cornered animal, sitting up at the head of my bed. My back and arms pinned up against the wall as I stared at the mist. It just slowly faded away and then was gone. That's my experience. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, replaying it over and over in my head. Did that actually happen? Was I dreaming? I must have been dreaming. But I'm sitting here awake, the sheets kicked off my bed from when I sprang back. It happened so clearly. No, it was real. This really happened. But it couldn't have. I decided to tell my uncle the next day. I had mentioned previously that I got creeped out hanging out downstairs alone, but that was the extent that he knew up to this point. He actually believed me, or pretended to, and said that he got weird feelings in the house at times as well. He also told me that the previous owner had been an elderly man that passed away. At this point, I only had a couple more weeks left at his place before I needed to head home to get ready for my next year at college. I tried to stick it out, but after 2 entirely sleepless nights, I told him I was heading home early and left. He ended up moving for work reasons a couple years later, and I did visit him once at that house for a family Thanksgiving, but did not sleep there. If you made it this far, thank you. People who've had experiences or knowledge on this topic, do you have any thoughts? I had never had any paranormal experiences before this, and didn't really think about ghosts or whatever they were, real or not. I certainly never thought they would be able to physically interact with me. As you can probably guess, I'm a firm believer now, but have not had any other experiences, and hope not to. 2. When I was 16 or something, I used to go every summer to my aunt and uncle's house in the countryside. I used to live in a city near to the desert, so it was pretty fun and refreshing to go to. The thing is that my uncle is really good to tell stories and give them a fake ending, and I'm autistic, so I would realize they were lies when something really extreme and unbelievable happened, or my sister directly told me that he was lying. But the stories weren't like in a compulsive liar way. It was more like to start telling a real story but exaggerate everything and give it a funny ending. So, this one day we're eating fries and drinking Pepsi, although he was a little bit drunk because he was drinking beer too. My sister and I were with him, and suddenly, his face became very serious, and he said that the story he was going to tell us was 100% true. I learned the hard way that I shouldn't take what he said seriously, so playfully I told him to go on. He started by telling me that when he was little, he and his brother had their own rooms, so he slept by himself. The thing is, some nights would appear what he called El Fantasma del Toc Toc. That translates as the knock-knock ghost. He would hear 4 knocks on the window and feel like something was watching him. This happened pretty frequently and really scared him. I said something like, "Okay, you should stop drinking and go to bed," and laughed. My aunt was with my younger sister on the bed because she was telling her a story and fell asleep, so I had to sleep in the big bed with my uncle. I remember that I was reading a fan fiction or something. It was pretty late, and all I could hear was my uncle snoring. I was really concentrating on what I was doing, but suddenly I heard 4 knocks on the window. I laughed out loud and said, "You'll have to work harder to scare me," thinking that it was one of my cousins trying to scare me because they heard the story or something. So I go back to reading with a smile on my face. I was laying down when I swear I felt a weight on my legs as if someone was sitting on them. I sat down immediately and looked to see if it was someone pranking me, but all I saw was my legs covered by the sheets. I panicked and bent my legs so I could hold them with my arms, but I couldn't, until from one moment to another the weight disappeared. I was shocked because I really couldn't explain what happened. I believe in spirits and energies and stuff, but it had never happened to me. I'm a pretty logical person, so when something mildly paranormal happened, I would give it a logical explanation right away, but this time I just couldn't. I convinced myself to just think that it was paranoia because of the story that my uncle had told me, but at the same time, I didn't believe him. I really thought he was drunk and messing with me, and the story didn't scare me, so I don't know how my head would make it up. Has this happened or something similar to any of you? 3. I don't know if this will be famous or if anyone will hear it. This is the first time I'm sharing this with the world, let alone really anybody other than my immediate family. I thought it would be fun to hop on and share a story for fun. That will always be an interesting topic. When I was 10 or 12, give or take, I lived in a house near Illinois-ish, not giving away the whereabouts. And this house was a normal mid-90s household. It was built in the 90s. What happened to my family was around 3 or 4 years ago. Anywho, this house was a normal household. We had lived in it up to that point for a good 5 years. Nothing happened, and we were fine. Everything was fine. Up until the point we put our house on the market. I was a little girl and was always upstairs doing my own thing. One night, about a couple of days with our house being on the market, my mother went to take the dog out late at night, probably like midnight. And as soon as she entered the garage alone with the dog, a slow scratching noise would start going up and down on a styrofoam box we had on the garage counter. My mom went to look on the other side of the box, expecting an animal to be causing this sound. To her surprise, nothing was there and the box was left untouched. At least by anything living. The slow scratching eventually turned into a fast, inhuman scratch. Thinking nothing of it, she continued on with her night and went to bed. I wish I could say that was the last thing that happened. Unfortunately, it wasn't. A lot of this happened to my mom, as the next thing that happened was when she was relaxing, taking a bubble bath. I can't remember if this was during the day or night, but I'm going to say it was at night. Our bathroom had 2 doors to enter, one from the hallway and one from the master bedroom. My mom had these both open, or at least had the hallway entrance closed. However, one door was open enough for her to see a shadowy figure. She describes it as a figure running across the entrance, also to mention that nobody was home with her. Again, she doesn't believe it was anything, maybe just her imagination. Meanwhile, I was around 10 years old enough to be home alone, and when I was home alone, the house would be dead silent. Just me and whatever else was there. I would hear footsteps as clear as day upstairs walking. I don't know if it could have been the house settling in, but there was something there with me, walking right above. Not only have I experienced this, but this has also happened to my mother as well. The night that changed our lives was the night that my sister found out. My sister did her own thing, usually, so I don't think she really knew much of what was happening. One night, my sister came up to my mom and explained to her that at night she would see figures and would be able to speak to them. This just creeped me out because at the time we would share a room and I guess I would have had to have been sleeping. I'm still not sure if she's a medium or not, but I would assume that she is. I forgot what the spirits may have said to her or what she would have said to them, but I know that she had that ability. Flashback to when I was 8 years old. Mind you, this was before anything had happened. I was going upstairs from the living room, and on around like the 3rd or 2nd step, I was pulled down off the stairs by my shoulders. I don't know if it could have been me falling backwards off the stairs, but if I'm remembering correctly, I remember there being this weird force, like I could feel something grabbing me. Anyways, after everything that happened, my mother was sleeping like every other night. However, this specific night, she was woken up by the darkness by an unfamiliar voice saying, "Hey." She turned on the lamp, and nobody was there. And my dad had been a heavy sleeper, so it couldn't have been him. When we were selling our house, we obviously had to leave so the people who were interested in buying could go view the house. After reviewing, we went back, and as soon as we were going upstairs, my sister's school picture was on the floor. Only hers had been knocked off. We speculate that it could have been the people accidentally knocking it off, but the photo was secure, and the people who had viewed it didn't knock it off the wall, quoted from the realtor that had been there. After we thankfully sold the house and moved out, my mother had mentioned to the realtor all of our paranormal activity that we had been experiencing. And to our shock, the realtor, who had lived in the same house prior to us, had mentioned similar experiences, as well as haunted furniture that she had brought into the house years and years back, that had generations of potential spirits attached to them. I hope this was entertaining, and I am very blessed to be in a new house, and I hope never to experience that again. Moral of the story, don't buy potentially haunted furniture. Also, I watch Sam and Colby all the time, so I mean, maybe they should do an investigation there sometime. 4. It started 5 years ago when I bought my current house. I began having horrible episodes of sleep paralysis, so bad that I would dread sleeping every night. I would see hands crawl up and reach for me from the side of the bed, figures standing in the corner or at the edge of the bed, and sometimes spiders crawling on my ceiling. I still get sleep paralysis occasionally, but nowhere near the amount that I was then. Minor things would happen around the house during this time that weren't necessarily explainable, but easily written off as me having poor sleep and a lot of stress. Fast forward to about 2 years ago. I have a big bookshelf in my living room that I consider one of my most prized possessions. My books are always in line and in the correct order. I'm super particular about them. When I would get home from work, a couple of books would be flipped upside down with the pages out, rather than the spine. The light in my bedroom would be messed with too. I have it set so that when I flip my light switch, the light stays off but the fan turns on to the full power setting. This would always be changed when I'd get home. The only way to change it is to pull the cord hanging from the fixture itself. Once I had friends over, we went outside of my house to chill and obviously left the door unlocked. Tried to go back inside. Door was locked. Luckily, that time I did happen to have my keys with me as I grabbed them out of habit. Lately, things have been getting harder to ignore and write off. My boyfriend and I were sitting in the living room late at night watching TV. The lamp we had on started flickering really intensely. This never happened before with this light and hasn't happened since. We were trying to sleep a few weeks ago and heard my son talking through our bedroom door. Opened the door, no child there. He was sleeping in bed. He's too young to pull any prank like that. A few nights ago in the shower, I heard my boyfriend talking to me. Voice clear as day, but due to the sound of the water, I couldn't make out his words. Pulled the curtain back. Wasn't him. I went to use the bathroom at around 2 a.m. another night this week. Closed the door to keep the cats out, but right as I was about to get up and head back to bed, I heard a whistle on the other side of the door. No one was there. Asked my boyfriend if it was him trying to fool me, and he was just as shaken as I was. I keep waking up with random bruising and scratches too. People come into my home and tell me they have feelings of being watched or not being alone. Friends of mine are afraid to come over. My cats watch empty areas of the room intently and run off like something scared them. I don't really know what to do at this point. I've spent the last 5 years ignoring it and coming up with some weak explanation for things that happen. But it seems to happen more often as time goes on. And after this past week, I'm spooked. If anyone has any ideas or recommendations, let me know. Anything helps at this point. 5. Hello. So, I'm not really sure if this is related to the paranormal. However, I'm unsure where to ask. Long story short, things like this have happened a lot in my life. They used to happen a lot less, and usually I would dream of it first, then see it, and there would be a time period in between that would always make me question whether I actually dreamt or thought of it before it happened. I've been depressed most of my life and on antidepressants. I'm mentioning this because the last 8 months I suddenly felt the need to come off of them, and I'm doing better emotionally and have been on a spiritual journey almost. Since then, things have gotten a lot more intense to the point I 100% believe it cannot be a coincidence, as things are happening almost daily. I'm not going to lie, it's making me scared, and I'm not enjoying it as I'm worried it's caused by outer forces, etc., or it's a bad sign or negative energies. It's been happening way more since I confirmed things like spirits are real. Long story. I'm worried something is with me, however I was getting it before. A few things have been happening. The main thing is that I will think of something, and it will happen. Here's what's happened in the space of a few days. Remember, things like this have been happening almost daily. I was talking about a company and how I wish I could work there. I decided to go online, in general to look for jobs, and saw an ad online, specifically that day for a job with them. Rare. Applied and was employed suddenly after originally waiting 8 months with no job offers. Was looking up food poisoning not long ago, and I suddenly thought about it and was reading about random things as I have never had it. I was supposed to go to an event, and I was thinking how scary if I got it on that day of the event. I don't know why, and then I did. Went to McDonald's at 3 a.m., had a burger, and then suddenly got food poisoning, first time in my life. Then the other day a clip popped up in my head from a film where a bird hits a bedroom window, and literally 2 minutes later, bird comes flying into my window. It survived, luckily, but I have never been aware of a bird hitting my window before. Also then, I was looking up cars the other day and was looking at this glitter steering wheel. Gotta buy a separate and specific pink car. It's very rare to see them. I have only seen a handful in my life, and after, on the way back from McDonald's, I see the exact pink car and steering wheel. I don't even drive yet, so the fact I was looking at cars and saw it a few days later was bizarre. Also, a few times my friends are thinking of something random. And I have brung it up, and they even say that's weird on top of the other stuff this week. Also other small things like seeing a film I've never seen from 2019, yet I'm a big fan of the movie genre, and couldn't work out what it was called. And then, on that day, my brother asks if I want to watch that movie with him. No way he could have known, and if he hadn't have said that, I wouldn't have known the movie title. Those are just some of the things. More has happened, but I have a bad memory. I need to start writing it down. Much more bigger things have happened too, like seeing deaths, etc. This is happening daily, almost. I don't know how to explain it either, but I also feel like something is with me. Like a presence when I'm in my house, and had something happen that proved there is something after life. Too long to explain. I'm feeling a bit nervous from it all, as the things that have been happening can no longer be a coincidence. What is this? Has anyone else experienced it? I spoke to someone, and they said it could be negative energies. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 335, and thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please do hit the like button if you'd be so kind. Also, if you'd like to get the videos a little bit early, you can support the channel monetarily on a monthly basis for however little or however much you like through Patreon. You'll find the link for that in the description, where you'll also find a link to the Hellfreezer merchandise store. You can buy all sorts of cool Hellfreezer merch, and you can also make donations during videos and streams if you please. This is not required, but it helps pay the bills, and I do appreciate it. Alrighty. Let's see, no other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is there a movie, a horror movie, we'll keep it on theme since this is paranormal, you've never seen but you don't feel like you need to because you know so much about it? I can name one right off the bat, several actually, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I've never personally been interested in those movies, but a lot of review channels I enjoy on YouTube, they've covered it. So I've watched those or had them on in the background or something. So I know the plot of the movie, I know the characters and such, and while I've never personally been interested, and I must clarify, I'm not insulting them, it's just not my kind of thing. Although I do like slasher movies like Jason, to a lesser extent Halloween, and various others. Although not Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm not really a fan of Freddy Krueger. But I feel like effectively, although I've not seen it, I know everything I need to know about it. So why don't you let me know if there's any movies like that where you've learned so much about them you don't really feel you need to watch them in a comment below. And bear in mind, I am not insulting people's tastes. People like what they like, and that's absolutely fair enough. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.